Hi, everybody. Oh, my screen just shifted. Sorry. My name is Laura Kane from Torch Wellness, and I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. I decided to do a pop-up kind of meditation, kind of informative class tonight because I think the world really needs a little bit of assistance right now, myself included. Um, it's unprecedented times we're living in right now. And I have found in my practice, I have found in my own life, I have found within my neighbors and my friends, like everybody's feeling uncertain. Everyone's feeling some level of fear, frustration, irritability, because things just keep changing and there's no certainty. So I wanted to offer a class tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the nervous system. I'm going to give you some tips on things that you can do maybe over the next 48 hours, maybe 72 hours, maybe week, 2 weeks. I don't know how long, it's going to take for the drama of this election to play out. But I do know that that's causing a lot of anxiety, coupled with the fact that the numbers from COVID are skyrocketing. And we're not doing a very good job of kind of keeping that in check. So when we look outside of ourselves, we see all these things perhaps going wrong, all these things that we can't control, all these things that are negatively impacting our lives. And it causes our nervous system, obviously, to get a little upregulated because we want to feel certain and we want to feel safe and we want things to be predictable. And I want to kind of normalize what's going on right now because I'll have a lot of clients come in and they'll say, I'm feeling more anxious and I don't know why. Or there's, I'm sorry. I hope that's better. I don't know. That's not looking. I'm feeling more depressed and I don't know why. And I just would like to normalize everyone's feelings and experiences right now. We are being faced with a global pandemic that we have no idea how to control it. We have no idea when it's going to end, and it could turn deadly. So most of the time when we're experiencing anxiety, it's because our brain is perceiving a threat in the environment and there's no real threat in the environment, so that's when people are saying, just calm down, just let it go, what's going on inside your head. But right now, we have a true threat in our environment. And so even people who hadn't experienced anxiety before most likely are going to be experiencing some level of anxiety because the limbic system, our middle brain, which is in charge of surveying the environment and determining if we're safe or not safe, the limbic system is going to be like, oh, we're not safe. So that's a very normal thing. Depression at this point, or even I've been saying I have the COVID blues. We've been at this for 9 months and there's no end in sight. We're headed into winter. We all will be much more secluded and isolated over the winter months because we won't be able to go outside as much or as often. And so there's a level of hopelessness or helplessness or even despair that creeps in during this time. And once again, that's normal. We're also grieving. We're grieving the loss of our lives that we had 10 months ago, 1 year ago. We're grieving so many losses. Just the loss of the mundane, especially for parents who, my heart goes out to all of you with the kids in school, kids out of school, trying to manage work, trying to manage a household. It's crazy. So to normalize what's going on, and then on top of it, let's talk about the political situation and how partisan we've become and how angry and fearful and violent our culture has become um, over the past few months. I think part of it is the COVID, is making us more anxious. And then a lot of times we don't even realize we're experiencing fear or grief or sadness from COVID. And so then, because we're not really very good at processing our own emotions and taking care, self-care, and having self-compassion, we're feeling something, we want to get rid of it. So then it's easy to kind of find a target, so right now you find someone who ascribes to a different political party than you do, and a very abstract, because we're not even having conversations. So it's just them, right? Us versus them, black versus white. And then it's so easy to kind of project onto them that they're the ones causing us to feel grief and anger and fear versus COVID, which is really the situation. It's obviously much more complex than that. But I just wanted to normalize it because I have to remind clients and myself that whatever feelings are coming up are normal. They're normal. We're all feeling grief and sadness and anger and frustration. We're all feeling fear on some level. So give yourself a break. And I think the first tip I would say is practicing self-compassion. I'm reading a book, just about to finish, called Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. And I have really learned how helpful it can be to just be kind to yourself, to be compassionate for yourself, to just have a better self-talk, because most of us are so critical of ourselves and so judgmental of ourselves, and we get so wrapped up in our to-do list and our productivity and how people are seeing us and how we're behaving, blah, 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 that we haven't learned how to really have a relationship with ourselves. And so my first tip for the night would be start practicing self-compassion. And what that looks like is you're feeling something come up, and for most of us, it's anger and anxiety, which are superficial emotions. Those aren't even the real emotions. Anger and anxiety pop up when there's something else coming up from underneath that we don't recognize or that we haven't learned how to acknowledge or whatnot. So then you feel anger and anxiety because your limbic system's going, whoa, whoa, something's going on here. It doesn't feel good. It might not be safe, but we don't know how to manage it. So anytime you're kind of having this negative feeling or emotional state come up, allow yourself to feel it. And then you can say something like, wow, this is really a hard time, dear one, use endearing terms for yourself. Dear one, this is a really difficult time. Yes, I understand you're feeling grief. It makes sense. It's a really hard time. You can hug yourself. Maybe that's another tip. Just give yourself a hug. Self-touching and pressure is so important. We crave it, and we're just not able to get as much of it these days because we're having to socially isolate. And so as you're showing self-compassion, as you're acknowledging kind of what's going on, even if you don't know, yes, they're so confusing. That's so normal. I love you. I'm here to support you. Let's just sit with this for a moment. Just showing some kindness for yourself. And then maybe giving yourself a big hug. That can be really very helpful. Another thing to consider during this time of craziness is to think about, as objectively as possible, what you can control and what you can't control. So since tomorrow's a rather pivotal day, I'll pick on the election, but COVID, you can easily do this for COVID as well. But tomorrow, what are the things that we can control? Pretty much voting. And then for those people who volunteered or put out a yard sign or took it upon themselves to discuss what they believed in. Those are, the things that we can do. But once we pass tomorrow, there's nothing really that we can do to change what the outcome is going to be. And it may be pretty tumultuous. I don't know. I've been praying that, whatever happens, that it's as peaceful as possible for our country so that we can move forward. I'm keeping that prayer in my head when I'm feeling the fear. But we have to think about what we can control, and then we think about what we can control, which is I can control my prayers. I can control my thoughts if I'm mindful of them. And so a lot of times we're just unconscious and on automatic pilot, and we're just barreling through our lives. And it's like we go through this checklist of all the things we need to do, and we don't even pay attention to our thoughts. And they go crazy, especially when there's so much negativity around us right now, right? And fear and uncertainty. So I'll have clients that will say, I can't meditate. I can't sit. My mind goes all over the place. And I'm like, that's the whole reason we meditate, is to start practicing sitting with ourselves so we can start to become mindful of where our thoughts are going. And then when you realize, wow, there's a million thoughts running through my mind, there's a million, things going, and they're not making me feel good, then we can start becoming aware of when our mind starts going down this negative rabbit hole, and then pivoting. Pivot's my word for 2020. Reframe was the word a few years ago, but now it's pivot. So you pivot. So, let's say you're fearful of the outcome tomorrow. Well, a pivot would be, I'm looking forward to change. If you're feeling like the outcome tomorrow isn't bringing the change, then I'm looking forward to figuring out how I can start working towards affecting change. So volunteering, starting a group where you have different people of different political leanings coming together and having a conversation. So starting a group on discourse. Starting to find one of your neighbors who has a different political view than you and ask them if you guys can start having a conversation about it. Start educating yourself. There's all kinds of things, but you have to figure out. So rather than bemoaning the fact or falling into a pit of denying what's real, because that's really where most of our suffering comes from, is when we reject what's going on and we resist it, versus coming to a point of acceptance. Okay, this happened. I'm not very happy about it. So for instance, my dog is about to hack up a lung. I'm not really very happy about it, but I can't change it. Poor little guy. He's 14. But you can't change the outcome of the election, but you can do other things that can help you feel more in control or more powerful to elicit change in a smaller arena. The presidential election's a pretty big arena, and really all of us have one vote. With COVID, rather than thinking about how inconvenient COVID is, or thinking about how much your life has changed, or how uncertain things are, think about the things you can control. You can pick up the phone and you can call a friend. I've started sending a letter once a week to various people all over the country, and it's been really lovely, just handwriting a letter and sending it off. Just helps me feel like, one, I'm able to take some meditative time to write a letter, but then thinking about the fact of people opening the letter, and hopefully it makes their day better. So I like doing that. I've also started a daily yoga practice. So with COVID, starting to do daily self-care. It can be qigong, it can be yoga, it can be meditating. And when I'm saying meditating, I just was listening to Sharon Salzberg, who's one of the forerunners in the United States on Buddhist teachings. She quoted a study that researchers figured out somewhere up in New England 9 minutes a day of meditation. So 9 minutes of just sitting quietly with yourself, maybe breathing, maybe having a mantra, but 9 minutes starts to change the brain. And then 15 minutes is even better. So there were 2 studies, and I think both of them had a little bit different minimum. One was 9 minutes, one was 15, so we can average it to 12. But 9 minutes a day, can you give yourself 9 minutes a day just to sit? Because it will have such a dramatic positive impact on your life. So that being said, really being able to look for the positive in the situation. And there's always a silver lining. In every situation, there is a silver lining. And sometimes we can't see it. And sometimes the silver lining is this is something that human beings go through. And I know that there are other people who are suffering like I am today. And I will send them a prayer to alleviate their suffering. I will send them a little bit of love. I'll send myself a little. So even worst case scenario, you can't find any other silver lining. Compassion. Compassion, compassion, compassion is the place to go. So when you're in doubt and you can't think of anything, just hear me saying, because I have clients that say, they'll go through their mind, what would Laura say? Laura says, when all else fails, practice self-compassion. And if you can't do it for yourself, because in the United States we have this crazy belief that if we focus on ourselves, we're selfish. You can send compassion to somebody else you know who is suffering. So, okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the vagus nerve, which is a cranial nerve in our body. So there's 2 kind of parts of our nervous system. We have our cranial nerves, so they're all the nerves that originate in our brain, and most of them terminate. So you have like your optic nerve, your olfactory nerve, we've got our hearing. So there's 12 cranial nerves, and I think there's just 2, there may be 3, that actually come out of the cranium and affect other parts of the body. And then you have your peripheral nerves, which are all the nerves that come out of the spinal column. And then they, do amazing things in helping us sense our environment and help us move. So we've got somatic and autonomic. But there's one cranial nerve called the vagus nerve. And vagus means wandering. And this nerve is really remarkable. So it comes down our throat, and then it basically innervates every visceral organ in our body. So every organ. So it hits our lungs, it hits our heart, hits our diaphragm, our stomach, our intestines, our pancreas, every organ. And 80% of the nerve transmissions for the vagus nerve are coming from the brain to the body, okay? And then 20% from the body to the brain. So basically, the vagus nerve is kind of telling everybody, do we need to turn on? Do we need to be in fight or flight, or do we need to be in rest and digest? Fight or flight being sympathetic, so that's the sympathetic part of the nervous system, and then rest and digest being parasympathetic. But what happens is the more stressed we are, the less activated the vagus nerve becomes. So, and actually for those people who have experienced trauma, the vagus nerve, or the vagal tone is what they call it, can actually become diminished. And so it's almost like you have to kind of restart the vagus nerve a few times repetitively. That's why like meditation and yoga, things that you're constant every day coming back to the mat, help really to increase that vagal tone. So what we want to do, so when we're stressed, the vagus nerve kind of goes to sleep. I'm simplifying things dramatically, but it goes to sleep. And what we want to do is we want to turn it back on. So there are some very easy things that we can do to do this. The first exercise is a little bit, I'm not going to have time to fully do it, but I'm going to show it to you, and then I'd like for you to practice it and see if it's helpful. Because sometimes you need to spend like 2-3 minutes doing this. But what you do is you're going to clasp your hands like this behind your neck. So you're going to clasp your hands, and then you just feel the kind of your hands pulling on your neck. So what this is doing is it's putting a little pressure on the occipital muscles. So all these little muscles that hold your head up, that are get so taxed, through our day, holding this 10-pound bowling ball. So you're going to do that, and your thumbs are going to kind of press right above the trapezius muscle, so right where kind of the neck meets the shoulders. And then what you're going to do is you're going to look to the right. So we're engaging the optic nerve, but there's an association between the optic nerve and the vagus nerve that if you hold your eyes to the right, and it might take 30 seconds, it might take a minute, it might take 2 minutes, but eventually what will happen is your body will sigh, or you'll feel your body relax. It's pretty profound, actually. I do this once or twice a day. And when you feel that sigh or that relax happen, you bring your eyes back to the center, and then you look to the left. And then you just hold your eyes to the left. You just wait. And then what will happen is you'll feel either a sigh, or there's just this kind of, for me, there's just this relaxation response. I can just feel it go all the way down my spine. It's really lovely. So that's number one. Number two, a facial massage. Facial and shoulder massage. So rubbing your cheeks, rubbing your temples, rubbing your jaw. We have such a outbreak of TMJ in our country, and one of the theories is it's not the cranial, it's not the vagus nerve, but there's another, the facial nerve. It's too much tension in one of the cranial nerves, and so that's causing this TMJ. And then if you reach once again to the back of your head, you can feel where your skull is, and you're going to take your fingers about 2 inches apart, and then you're going to walk your fingers down, and you'll feel kind of 2 little bumps right at your occiput, so right where the spinal column goes into the brain. And so you rub those. Those are really nice. And then you're going to walk your fingers like at a diagonal down and a little forward, and there's 2 more bumps kind of right behind your ears, a little bit below your ears, your mastoid process. So, and then you kind of rub that. And then you can rub the neck all the way down. And then there's K27, which is an acupressure spot. It's right underneath of your clavicle. You can rub this one, just back and forth. And then you can come out, and there's a spot like right, I don't know if you can see, probably not, right where your deltoid and your pec kind of meets. There's a little sulcus right there. It's right the lung meridian, the beginning of it, this acupressure, and you can just rub that. And that's really very helpful to start stimulating the vagus nerve. And then another one, so I think we're, number 3? Thumping on the chest. So we're thumping, and I think you can see, like right at the breastbone, right above the heart. You can go up and down. And you can even go on the side of the chest, like just, because what this is doing is the vagus nerve comes down the throat, down into the heart and the lungs. And so just this little chest thumping says, it's kind of like, hey, kind of turns the vagus nerve on. So thumping the chest. Number 4. I'm sorry if my counting is off. I didn't number them on my sheet. Neck rolls. I love doing neck rolls. And I will ask clients sometimes if they're just completely stressed out and they can't even slow down their breathing, because sometimes that happens. I ask them to start with neck rolls. And so you can, pull your chin forward and then just very slowly roll your head one way, and then roll your head the other way, and once again, vagus nerves coming down the throat. So this is activating the vagus nerve, as well as kind of helping with your shoulder muscles. Oh, and I forgot to say with the massaging your shoulders, massaging your arms. Like any self-massage is really going to help reduce your anxiety, calm you down. It's just self-soothing. So neck rolls and neck stretches. I always like to bring one, my right ear to my right shoulder, and then I'll bring my hand up and pull. Sometimes I'll get a nice neck crack, and then I'll go to the other side. If you have neck problems, there was one right there. Don't do that, obviously. But singing and humming, that's another one. Really, you can't mess up singing your favorite song. I have a Happy Tunes playlist, and I will put it in, and within like 1 or 2 songs, my entire mood has changed. So put in your favorite hymn, start singing, start humming. This is where if you do yoga, chanting is so helpful, activates that larynx. Vagus nerve goes right through that throat. And so chanting, ujjayi breathing is really very helpful. I'm going to get to that in a second. Another one, and if you would like us to send you this list, we are going to type it up. And so just email us at email us at torchwellness@gmail.com, and we will be more than glad to send you a list of all of the things that I'm mentioning tonight. All right, another thing that the vagus nerve loves is inversions. So getting your heart above your head. For those of you who do yoga, headstands are absolutely fabulous if you can do them and they are in your practice. Please do not do it if it's not in your practice. But pressing on the top of the head, the cranium, not only gives like a lovely massage for all of the ventricles and for the brain, but also obviously gets the heart above the head. And they call that bathing the glands. If you have no level of yoga practice and you get dizzy, if you put your head between your knees, you can lay down on the ground and put your legs up the wall. So that's a fabulous, fabulous thing to do. I think everyone should do 5 minutes of that at the end of their day. I'll do it throughout my day. I just lay down on my ground and put my feet up the wall. And within just a few minutes, I can feel my parasympathetic nervous system kicking in. It's really delightful. And then if you can put your head between your knees, put your head between your knees. So sit in your chair. You can sit on the edge of your chair. Spread your feet apart, about a foot apart. You can take a nice deep breath in. I even like to arch my back to kind of open the chest. And then you just allow your head to kind of slowly dive down in between your knees. And then just sit there. If you could sit there for 5 minutes, that would be great. If you could just sit there for a minute, that's fine. But just really, and if you can get your arms in between your knees and then just allow your hands or your arms to rest on the earth, even better, because it's giving a nice little traction for the shoulders. And then if you have an exercise ball, another great way. If you can arch on it, doing like kind of a bridge, that's really great. Or you can lay forward on the front of your body and just kind of allow your head to sit on the ground and just let your body be above it. But just doing the inversion, that's really so good for our blood vessels, for our muscles, for our organs, but that will turn on the vagus nerve. So we want to turn on the tone of the vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve will push us into parasympathetic. When the vagus nerve is up and running, as long as we're not, running from a bear, it will push you into a more relaxed state. Stretching's another good one, especially upper body stretching. So doing the arm in front, doing the tricep stretch, Those of you who do yoga, eagle arms, side stretch. There's so many. There's so many stretches. But just moving your body. I really think a large part of what's happening is we've just become so detached from our bodies. We're so in our heads that we just take our bodies for granted. And our bodies have so much wisdom for us. And also, we cannot connect to our heart chakra. We can't connect to our love center when we're here. When you're here, you're not in your heart. When you're in your body, you're in your heart. So even just taking time to put your hands over your heart and then breathing. So my last one is breathing. For those of you who have worked with me, you know how important this is to me. I have a lot of breathing meditations on YouTube, but tonight I just wanted to do a real quick counting breath. It's kind of the foundation of all that I teach because it's so easy and it can have such a dramatic effect on our physiology within a minute, maybe two. So for those of you who would like to do this, we'll probably do just a few minutes. It won't be long. I'd like for you to get comfortable. Get some water. All right, so feet on the floor, hands in your lap, nothing crossed, messes with the energy. And then just close your eyes and take a minute just to be mindful of your body. Perhaps be mindful of your emotional state right now. Notice where your thoughts are going. But see if you can detach from them. You are not your thoughts. We are not our thoughts. And we really limit ourselves when we believe we are. So recognize that your thoughts are just mirroring the collision of your past experiences with how you're interpreting what's going on right now. So see if you can detach from your thoughts and just allow them to move through your mind like clouds in the sky as you become more grounded in your body. Just feel your body resting on the chair or the sofa. Feel your feet resting on the earth. Take a few deep breaths in, and you can even sigh. That's another vagal nerve activator, sighing. So just taking a nice deep breath and then sigh it out. And do one more nice deep breath and sigh it out. And what I'd like for you to do is pay attention to your in-breath. And I want you to start counting. As soon as that in-breath comes in, I want you to start counting. And then I want you to stop counting when your breath feels full. And then exhale and allow the breath to leave the body. And so with each in-breath, you start counting when the breath starts moving in. You stop when the breath is full. And then you release into an exhale. And I want you to pick a count that feels good. So for most people, it's like a 2 count, it's a 3 count, it's a 4 count. Doesn't matter though. You might be a fast counter. You could do like 8. It doesn't matter. But what I want you to do is to make every in-breath the same count. So once you have found a count that feels good, I want you to make every in-breath that same count. So if it's a 3 count, every in-breath's a 3 count. And then you let go, release, and start again. So I'm going to give you just a moment to find that rhythm. And know that every day it might be different. Some days you might be pretty relaxed and be able to get a 5 count, and some days you might not be able to get a 1. Well, you have to get a 1, but so this is a judgment-free zone. And once you've figured out a good count for the in-breath, and you feel like you've got a good tempo, I want you to start making the exhale the same count. So if you had a 3-count in-breath, I would like for you to do a 3-count exhale. And so the idea is we're just balancing the breath to give a message to the nervous system that we're seeking balance. So the amount we're bringing in is equal to the amount we're bringing out. And as you exhale, I want you to just imagine releasing and letting go. And so sometimes clients like the idea of, as you're breathing in, you're drawing in positive energy and light. And as you're breathing out, you're letting go of any toxins or any negativity. And so this is the meditation. And you can do this for 5 minutes, you can do this for 10 minutes, but there are other things you can do to play with it that will make it even more relaxing. And so as you're doing your in-breath and your out-breath, can you add an extra count to the exhale? So if you have a 2-count in-breath, can you make it a 3-count exhale? And if you can't, what will happen is, as you're doing that 3rd count on the exhale, your mind may wander. You may notice tension in your body. It may feel forced. So if any of those things happen, go back to 2 and 2. But if your body's feeling like it's starting to unwind and starting to relax, go ahead and add that extra count. And then if you're adding counts, you can add enough counts that you could double the in-breath. You don't want to go any more than doubling the in-breath. It becomes stressful for the nervous system. But if you have a 2-count in-breath, see if you can get to a 4-count out-breath. This is not a competition. It's not better to get there. So if the body creates tension as you're trying to do that, come back into just the balanced breathing. But if your body is starting to open up and unwind, adding those extra counts to the exhale, activate the vagus nerve and help the body relax and soften. And then another thing you can do is as you breathe in, at the top of the in-breath, you can pause for 1 count and then exhale down. So breathing in to a count of 2, pausing for 1, exhaling to 2. Or breathing in to 2, pausing for 1, exhaling to 3. So these are just 2 ways that you can kind of play with counting breath to help support relaxation. And just the act of doing the counting breath gets the diaphragm moving, gets the lungs moving. As the diaphragm moves, the internal organs move. So you may notice your belly starting to move a little bit. You may notice your pelvis moving a little bit. All of those actions activate the nervous system, the vagus nerve in particular. And so you go ahead and on your next exhale, just release the meditation and just take a moment just to be mindful of your body. sitting in this position. You can go for as long as you'd like. Really, like 5 or 10 minutes a day is perfect. But I would take even 1 at this point. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, I want to say thank you for joining me, and I'm just going to review. I just want, as we're going into what may be an even crazier time, I don't know, I'm going to hope for the positive, and that after tomorrow, things are going to start getting markedly better as far as this cultural anxiety we're experiencing. But I just want to normalize. So when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, when you're starting to go into stinking thinking, when you're starting to feel that fear creep in, just normalize it. This is normal because we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. So taking care of yourself, normalizing it, showing yourself some self-compassion, perhaps doing 1 or 2 or all of these things that I told you about tonight to help support your nervous system in staying, or at least moving towards a parasympathetic, a rest and digest state, and getting that vagus nerve online. So important. Especially, and even just for our own mental health. You know, good vagal tone is absolutely pertinent, necessary for good mental health. And so diminished vagal tone's been linked to depression, to autism, to anxiety, PTSD, and schizophrenia, actually. They've done studies on all of those, and when they helped clients increase vagal tone, they showed improvements in the symptoms. So this is not just for anxiety. I mean, and it's for stress. And then pivot to the positive. So when you're finding yourself kind of going down these rabbit holes of negativity, see if you can make it almost a game. How can I find something good in this? How can I create a silver lining? And if all else fails, how can I show compassion? Either for myself or for other people who are also struggling. Because I promise you, none of us have had an experience that another human being has not experienced. None of us. It's the lovely, it's like a law of being part of humanity, is this interconnectedness. We all go through these periods where we feel lonely and we feel isolated and we feel like we're the only people experiencing this, and that is a lie. That is not true. Because we're all interconnected and we all are going through this experience called humanity, being humans. Humans being humans. And it's just part of the human condition. And suffering is part of the human condition. But we don't have to resist suffering, and we don't have to fight it. We don't have to want it to be differently than how it is. Because that's how we create the most suffering. And so if you can just take a deep breath, know we're all going to get through this. Know that you're going to get through this. Do yourself a favor, support your nervous system, do some good self-care, and if you need help, reach out for help. And we're here at Torch Wellness, so reach out to Torch Wellness. I am doing meditations every second Tuesday of the month. I think my next one is November 10th on Facebook Live. I have a lot of videos on my Torch Wellness page. I have a lot of videos on YouTube. You can search my name, Lara, Larakain, or I think you can search Torch Wellness and it's on YouTube. If you would like a transcript of this, my delightful assistant Tracy is transcribing it as we go along, so we can send you a transcript if you want to email us at torchwellness@gmail.com. And if you'd like a handout of all of the things I talked about tonight, please, please, please reach out to us. And if you'd like to be added to my newsletter, I send out a bi-monthly newsletter. It's got recipes, supplements, it's got health tips, it's got all kinds of stuff. It's pretty fun. So please be kind to yourselves. Please be kind to your neighbors. Please be kind to every human being and animal you see in the next few weeks, because I really think the world is going to need it. The world needs our light. So thank you again, and have a wonderful evening. Take care.